How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Hollywood Horror Show. I, of course, am your host, Hollywood, and today I'm going to be reading a creepypasta called Pasta Noir, Dame Slugs and the Hatchet Man. I'm really excited to read this one. I haven't read through the entire story yet. I've been through the first few chapters, and I gotta tell you, I'm already hooked. So, without further ado, let's begin Chapter 1, Hardboiled Blues.
Downtown night air was crisp and cool with the slight aroma of misery. He never thought that his life would turn out the way it did. The wife, the kid, the pride, all lost along the way. They were lost somewhere in the belly of the big, bad city, where they would never again age, remaining forever young, beautiful and full of grace. He still saw them in everything and everyone. The homicide investigator's life is never something called happily ever after. Every day, Detective Chris Priest woke up, looked up and asked why the fuck he was still around to do it all over again. It was his punishment, you see. His penance was waking up without them, still trying to make a dent of difference in this city on fire. Staring out of his window, he poured a quarter glass of Jim Beam and asked himself in the famous words of The Clash, should I stay, or should I rock the Casbah? The familiar metallic taste of the Colt 45 made things real at that moment. It was fear that kept him from biting the bullet, yet it was also his lack of fear that kept him afloat another day. It kept him doing what he did best, the only thing he cared about anymore. Fear was for the enemy, fear and bullets. What little faith he had left hung on like a loose string. One would think Chris would have completely and utterly lost his essence, his humanity, all in a brilliant flash of fuck you dished out by fate. Much had occurred in his life since he swore in and began serving as a rookie sheriff's deputy in Lytle, Texas 17 years ago. However, in the midst of all the glory, the coolness and the climbing, Chris had his number one with the bullet, Abby. She was firecrackers on the 4th. They drank out of the same bottle, never pulling any punches. They spent their days loving, laughing, living, fucking. It was February. The view from Chris's downtown window was covered in white, a rarity. The last time it really snowed in San Antonio was back in 1985 when he was 10 years old. He recalled that day with a warm, fuzzy feeling. He and his best friend were pulled out of school together so that they may go home and enjoy playing in the snow, where they would build snowmen and partake in the cliched snowball fights with their parents. It would be one of the best days of his existence. He wished they were by his side now. They would all enjoy the day off and play just as he did so long ago. I'll get the fuck off, Chris murmured to himself as he closed his eyes and took in a deep breath, opening his eyes as he exhaled. It wasn't exactly prime conditions for crime fighting in the city today. However, if he spent another moment alone in that bottle of Jim Beam, he might actually choose to rock the Casbah this day. He abandoned his quarter glass of JB and thought, it'll still be here when I get back. Let's get in a fucking character. Chris locked his apartment door. Not that he had much to steal, but it was better than coming home to an already near apartment. Worst case scenario, some scumbag would find all his booze and clean him out. That would be the icing on the chocolate cake. Booze kept him alive these days, saved his soul. In this city, you can never lose that spark. As he locked his door, he eyeballed the hallway on the right to see if anybody was coming or going. The air was stagnant and ever ominous. Miss Bonner, an old broad wasting away from loneliness, was slowly walking toward the stairs, taking her morning walk as she did most mornings. Chris imagined her as the kind of woman expecting some special letter from a special someone that never arrived. He knew everybody had a story, and skeleton. He imagined her once a young, beautiful dame, in love with a man and mother of 2 or 3 children. He knew he'd walk past her and she'd greet him, friendly as always, and begin the chit-chat. Most of the lost souls here preferred ignoring her. She reminded them of their own mortality. All the other ghosts of the Camino Real apartment building were stewing in their own misery. for her to do so alone. Someday they will have that void to fill too, the hesitation of the young with so much wasted life. They'd walk right past them like they're invisible, looking straight ahead, trying to avoid the simplicity of conversation, busy living or not living, too busy for an old ghost. Time sure had changed. "Good morning, Chris. Going out in this mess?" she asked casually. "Good morning, Miss Bonner. Bad guys don't take the day off, neither can I," he said with a smile. He figured the least he could do was take a minute or three to indulge her. He understood what it was to be all alone in this world and recognized that big emptiness within her. They were kindred spirits in sorrow. At some point, everybody hurts. Mrs. Bonner visibly brightened up. "Ha! You're a comedian. Well, it hasn't snowed here in about 30 years. Do you remember that?" she asked Chris. "Yeah, I do. It was a really good day for me. Played in the snow all day with my best friend." "And you? What were you doing that day?" he asked with a reminiscing smile. She looked away from him for a moment down the hallway. "My husband left me for some hussy that day. That was not a good day for me, Chris," she recalled, looking down at the floor, eyes slightly blue. "But the asshole married her and she left him 2 years later. Took him for everything he had," she admitted with a big smile. Chris laughed and held up his hand for a high five. Mrs. Bonner laughed as well as she high-fived him back. "You have a good day, Mrs. Bonner," he called out as he walked away. "Please, Chris, Mrs. Bonner was my mother. Call me Delia," she answered. "Huh, that's the name of my favorite Johnny Cash song," he smiled, looking back. With that, he made his way downstairs. Delia was beaming. Chris felt that warm, fuzzy feeling again he hadn't felt in so long. It was good to feel something again, even if just for a brief moment. Chris opened the door to the ancient apartment building. The cold punched him in the eyes as he let out a loud "Fuck!" His cell phone chimed, a text message from Michael Rodriguez, his partner, or his goddamn babysitter as he referred to Michael after the captain partnered him up. Michael was all right, though. He just reminded Chris a little too much of his former self. 11651 Alamo Lane, King William District. Already here. Not pretty. Chris replied. "Cold enough for you?" "On my way, sunshine." He placed his phone back into his pocket. He looked around the mean streets of this cruel city. She was all covered in white. His gaze found his own car parked along the curb, a 1987 Camaro, black paint chipping away, his black sunshine. Chris bought the car from his aunt when her son died of a heroin overdose. While his family was still alive, Chris put time and money into her. He hoped his son, Connor, would one day be proud to drive her around town, driving around the dames, living the good life of a teenage boy coming into his prime. Connor would help his dad with minor repairs and modifications on the Camaro from time to time. She was their special project. It was the only time they had anymore, usually on the weekends. However, a detective is always on call. He kept Miss Sunshine because she reminded him of the happy times with his son. Connor was only 13 when he departed from this world. Camaro was Chris's only baby now. He walked over and brushed off some of Mother Nature's blow, only to find most of the car was covered in ice. He would need to let her warm up for a while.
And that was Chapter 1 of Pasta Noir, Dames, Slugs, and the Hatchet Man. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please leave a like, a comment, or subscribe to my channel. If you've got a story that you'd like me to read, or you have your own story that you'd like me to narrate, then send it to my email, HollywoodHorrorShow42@gmail.com. I'll leave the address in the description below. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and don't forget, don't die.